And as I'm reading, I can already see the film. I start to scribble boards, as sketches initially, and then it starts to take form. I've already filmed it on paper.
To find designs that feel like something you haven't seen before, that's something that Ridley has accomplished in a very awesome way.
His storyboard process is pretty exclusive to him, where he does get into that amount of detail. We've got rough storyboards for the entire episode already come out of his head for every scene.
Because he comes from an art director background, you can't fool him. You gotta think like Wrigley, then you gotta go another level.
Within the first few moments, this is very, very high-tech thing. We'll pass over a landscape and smash into rubble. They are teaching on the end of Hull, which could easily be 1,000 feet deep. So already you're beginning with a problem. That's how the film begins. Oh, this is interesting. This thing here, this red ball, will be thrown on the ground and will burst open. As it's bursting open, it will form like a moving Lego kit. It will open up without them even looking at it and becomes that. When you go inside their dwelling, you're kind of entering the Middle Ages. We meet two people, mother and father, that are very odd in terms of their cadence and their character and their nature. As androids, 24 embryos were given to these specialized form of parents. Father will simply plug her in into 6 containers. So we'll find later in the story, we go into a flashback. We see the destruction of a city, that what's left of the world. There's now a ship that's already on its way, been coming for 13 years, which is called the Ark. Father one evening sees the Ark pass in front of them and think, oh my God, they're here.
It looks like nothing I've seen before in sci-fi, totally original, and it's come straight from Ridley's head.
You test it by saying, how crazy will it look? So you try and draw it. And then you think, I think that's going to work.
One of the most fortunate things for us on this picture is that Ridley is quite a good illustrator and does all his own drawings. So we can sit there in a meeting and he can draw for you right before your very eyes what he wants to see. And from that, we can extrapolate what's special effects, what's foreground, what's background, and he can guess at the length of a shot or the angle of the lens, and we all sort of talk that technical language. And then from that, we make a plan of what the shot will consist of.
He does quite a bit of storyboarding, I understand, right, from your work with him?
That's
like draws his own thing sometimes?
That's his way of thinking, yeah. That's his way of thinking. He does storyboards in various stages. He does storyboards just when he gets the script in the very early days, because he gets some drawings from him. Sometimes it's quite funny because you're doing one movie and you start getting storyboards. It's like, oh, wait a minute, it's just not what we're doing. Oh no, this is the next one. You haven't even gotten the script, and oh, that's the next one. Okay.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's his way of thinking. So he does that in a very early stage. And then, of course, while you start looking at locations, he refines the whole thing. And then even while we're shooting, he still does it because, you know, it's just there's a new sequence, new scene, and there's all the logistics and the technical stuff involved and the effects and stuff. So then all of a sudden he just makes his new drawings.
And how early would you get
you have to keep up with those storyboards all the time because and it doesn't have to be exactly where we're shooting, but it's basically getting into his way of thinking. It's kind of like a code, you know, that he just learned how he thinks, what he's gonna, and at the same time, from all those like 6-7 storyboards, you anticipating what might happen between this because it's going to be 30 more shots than he drew in the end, you know.
Yeah, as the process will evolve. Do you know how early, like when you got the script for House of Gucci, how early did you get your first storyboards from him, or how early did you guys talk? Do you guys read separately and then discuss the script, or how does that sort of work at the beginning?
hang on. With Gucci was a little bit, you know, he had this project going for a while. You know, when you work with him, you always hear about all the stuff he's thinking about. So it was basically, the whole story was developed by his wife, Janina, and originally really just wanted to produce the film and give it to other directors and stuff. And I think because of our hiatus during the last duel, because we shut down in March and we had like...
Every film I do, right now, I will draw the storyboard. So the storyboard for Napoleon is this thing. On Black Hawk Down is this thing, okay? Because what I'm doing, before I've seen the locations, before the locations, I'm filming on paper going from the text. And the text to me speaks to me, so I'm seeing the dynamics and the geometry of the text. So then frequently my boards will then be used to find the location. So it's kind of, in English we call it ass about face, but it's a good expression.
They're not storyboards, they're paintings.
This is what I'm doing. This is the opening of Napoleon Bonaparte. This is what I do. And this is handed, and this is costed, and that's how I end up under budget. So my boards for Bonaparte are this thick. And this is a new one because we decided to begin the film with the execution of the Queen, whose son believed to have said, "Let them eat bread," and they cut her head off. I don't know if you actually said that, somebody else said that. But we're now going to begin with that because it's a kind of spectacular statement about the outrage. Well, the revolution was for a reason, and a good reason. So the ousting of royalty at that particular time politically was totally correct. Right? But bloodthirsty, no, never blood if you can avoid it.
When you're working with Ridley, when you're talking about script or story, he draws almost continually. And, you know, he'll draw a frame, you know, and draw what he intends to see inside of it. And it's all up here. And, you know, if you're paying attention when you see the little bits of paper on the table, you can kind of piece together what it's going to look like.
When the script came in with the siege, you know, you get the siege sequence, and you know, you read the siege, and you go, you know, what is it? 8 pages or 12 pages of siege, you know, which, you know, was written by Bill, but obviously, you know, as Ridley dissects this is not what he's going to shoot, because it's, you know, it's an idea and a plan, but cinematically, you know, it's very, you know, you don't understand it. So with the siege, it's something that Ridley really sort of dissected, and he created the siege. You know, we know the siege happens in the script because this is the before and after, and that was very much in the script. But you had to really throw the script away, and then we developed it as we went along. So Ridley started basically, you know, sketching the whole sequence, you know, having it, you know, storyboarded through, and that became, in a sense, I guess, you know, the images that Ridley was looking for, and then, you know, as a starting plan, and really, you know, and to the sense that even when we were shooting it, you know what I mean? I mean, Ridley would be, as we were shooting, you know, elements of the siege, we'd say, right, we're doing this shot. Ridley would be boarding what we're going to shoot the next day. I mean, we'd all know that the next day was going to be the bit where the Saracens charge the wall falls down, and they defend the breach. But how we were going to shoot it, and how he was going to, you know, take that, you know, basic plot, and that's the plot point, and how he was going to twist it, and how he was going to create it visually was what he was doing. And that's the amazing thing with, you know, as an artist, when you see him sketching it, you know, you go, what we're doing is we're doing that, and you go, oh, I see, okay, fine, and you go and do that, and that was, you know, in a way he's sort of cutting the movie and editing it as he's shooting it.
Rid is amazing. He's incredibly prepared. By the time he starts the movie, he's already played the movie out in his head because he storyboards the whole film, every scene. So he knows exactly what he wants when he gets to set.
The storyboard were pinched on the wall in the hotel where we prepared. And the drawing was so beautiful. I wish I could have a book of those drawings.
This is pure art, what we're doing. That's what attracted me. I can literally visualize, and if I'm getting really into it, I'll really do a very detailed storyboard. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I think Hitchcock said that. I was attracted by the art of it. And if you get the art right, you are going to communicate.
Ridley Scott was really hands-on on this project. From the first storyboards he drew himself, all the way till the end, where every meeting we had, which was about once or twice a week, he would storyboard every idea. So we had an exact blueprint we can take to our artists, and they could develop it into the actual shots.
My favorite well, it was tricky because we knew that the whole effect would tell the story right. It was moving in a certain way, it would look like spot.
Our treatment was continually evolving because Ridley would sketch continually on set, so we need to reference real-world images to correspond with those drawings.
He also storyboards everything. He does small sketches. It's brilliant. You know, you get the light, the shade, the whole caboodle there. So it was his choice of lenses. It was his choice of where he was going with that particular camera. I suppose my effort was more in towards, I covered most of it with a second camera, tended to do the tighter shots when his camera wasn't in my shot.
I was steeped in heavy metal comics of those at that particular time, like Metal Hurlant and you know, a lot of Mobius's stuff actually. And I was very impressed by that, and I was just in those days trying to wonder, how do I apply this to movies, you know? How do I apply this kind of really fresh and beautifully visual thinking to film? And here it was. You need a hook when you're starting something. And my hook was my boards. I drew the boards, drew the corridors, drew the spacesuits. When you're drawing boards and corridors and spacesuits, you're also sucking yourself into story. Because I'm literally doing it, you know, chapter by chapter, scene by scene. You get ideas as you're drawing them. And the ideas fall into place not just as ideas, but as technological possibilities. And when that first idea comes, I tend to go with it and follow it. A storyboard is the first look at the film, you know, where you can actually go down the board and see the film. So it's by definition, it's what is about to go onto celluloid. And the storyboard starts off in my mind as I'm actually reading the script. And I can literally get flashes on the location which will very often actually give me a reason to choose that particular location, because I start to see the scene in the room or on the location or wherever it is. And I can literally get images bing in the head. And then that gets put down. I start to thumbnail, scribble things, thinking that, yeah, this will work, this is fine. You know, thumbnails are awfully fast if you know what you're doing. And I'm a draftsman, so I can really thumbnail something down as the state of play for the day, literally as I'm going there in the morning in a car. So when you hit the set, you know exactly what you've got to target. And sometimes I don't leave it that late. Sometimes it's done way earlier, and in which case I just glance through the boards, and I may have some new thoughts that morning as I'm going in which case then there'll be notations to the board or thumbnails on the board to remind me that this may be better or that may be better, you know. It's like a rehearsal for me. So I think that's why very often when I hit the set, I know exactly what I want to do, because I've talked through it with the storyboard artist. In fact, it's almost like the talking through with a storyboard artist that has almost prepared me totally to, because you have to articulate exactly what you're going to do. This is nothing new that I'm practicing. It goes back to the great, you know, filmmakers of the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think Hitchcock was the one who was the main, was a very much publicized user of a storyboard, and he would stick to the storyboard, which doesn't mean that he couldn't vie away from it if he saw something more interesting on the day. Doing a board which starts from a thumbnail to a polished board, I think is a bit like being a writer. They will start, you know, in the left-hand corner of the canvas or page and work right through. They'll do a pass and just, the key on painting is to actually Well, I always found, for me, get rid of the white canvas. Get something right across the canvas. Otherwise, if you don't, you're always looking at that area of white, which is like a blank sheet. Same with storyboards. You start off with thumbnails, and then if I'm getting really interested in the scene, think, oh, I've just seen. When I draw, I get sucked into the scene. So when I'm sucked into the scene, I start to visualize other opportunities, which aren't just pictures. They're maybe suggestions for actors, the way the scene can go, how you can adjust, and maybe even finally how the words are used, you know? So when I do that, it's abstract, because in fact it's wasting time, because I'm sitting there and I'll start to really finish a frame. And then, and I'll sometimes just finish a frame, so it's really, really drawn, shaded, dark, light, get the anatomy right. And then I'll move on with thumbnails. But in a funny kind of way, it's like a thumbprint for the storyboard artist to go, oh, okay, that's what it's like, and then to work with that. You don't draw every frame in every cut. Although if something gets tricky, I will virtually draw every frame in every cut. And you find a way of thumbnailing, adding with big frames and small frames. So in fact, a storyboard becomes rather like a sophisticated comic strip. Well, in fact, now comic strips are very sophisticated. And ideally, that's what a storyboard should be, because you're seeing the dynamics of, you know, and if it's really well drawn, then you can follow the dynamics of the sequence. And even if it's dialogue, you can always do something with a dialogue scene that isn't just two talking heads, but then, of course, two talking heads can also be interesting, you know. So it's knowing where to pull back.
Did you board this sequence out?
Totally.
Yeah.
Completely. Every shot, blow by blow.
So you knew every piece that you needed?
Yeah, because, you know, people say, well, it doesn't leave room for error. I said, on the contrary, it means I've thought it through. And it means I don't need anything else.
Right.
But they said, do you leave room for other things to happen? I say, of course, but...
At least you've got a plan.
We've got a plan. And usually, if we're well designed, I don't really need anything fortuitous to happen. Unless it happens magically when he's asking his lady to marry him, and the two white horses behind are not behaving, and one is trying to mount the other, and that was really good, so I just kept running.
He spitballs freely and creatively all the time, and always visually, he's always sketching and drawing. So that iterative process had been underway for months. We would sit and talk, and he would draw things, and sometimes just stuff he was making up off the cuff, and often things ruinous to the story that I'd written for that week. I'd bring in pages and he would kick my sandcastle down because what if this was happening? What if there was a, what do they call that thing where they model a solar system like an orrery? He's like, what if there was an orrery? And I'm like, what would that look like? And he starts sketching, and then I have to figure out what that is and what its meaning in the story will be and what role it will play. And so I throw my pages away and go write new pages. Often I'd walk into that room of artists and I would see Ridley's footprints, and there'd be post-it notes and guys saying, that's got to come down, and Ridley wants this head shaped like that, and this needs to be whiter, and that needs to be desexualized, and this needs to be darker and more haunted looking. And artists would be tearing stuff up because Ridley'd been through and reinventing it with his vision stamped on it. And then I would see that vision and see where Ridley was going and carry that home when I wrote my new pages.
And as a fleck, they can go away and there'll just be a plastic window which will come back up if you want it.
Yep.
Screens will probably be just that simple, right?
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is reinvent the face hugger. Right. Okay. Those are things that are decided around a table, and then off that over-rich stew, Lindelof comes in and goes, oh, I really like the script, but we could do this, 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 and this. And so Lindelof will go, thoom, carves through it, and suddenly I've got a 3-act piece. 3-act selling tool that I can make into a 3-act film. The design was one of the things I really enjoyed doing. And so between Arthur Max and finding his team, he got in these designers who are kind of cyber world designers. They design stuff on these marvelous laptops. Arthur chose, literally handpicked, I think, honestly, 5 of the best in the business. Absolutely superlative capabilities. And because I can draw, and also there's many reference photographs that Arthur and I always work with a lot of reference photographs, saying like this, like that, but not like that, physically like this, but not like that. And then, so you're suddenly getting absolute points of reference, saying, do me a sketch of this. I don't want it like that because I've done that before. So how do you get off on something which looks slightly different? It's really hard.
That's a great little sketch.
Yeah. Thank God for art school.
Yeah.
We would have meetings, and then Jon Spaihts would come in and work with Arthur and us, and Ridley too. It was interesting where I've never had an experience where a director would sit next to me and literally draw, and I would draw and he would draw, and then he'd say, "What do you think of this?" And then we'd flesh it out more, and then show it to him, and he'd draw back over it. Very few people are true artists in this industry, and he is one of them. He could design the whole movie himself if he had the time.
And here is something slightly ominous, which is a serious pair of high-tech shoes, boots. I don't like to repeat myself. So you're constantly evolving with these guys who are really great creators in their own right. So frequently we'll just talk or scribble saying, no, like this or like that.
We get a sort of weekly visit from Ridley where we sit down at the table, Ridley with a sketch pad, and we show him sort of work in progress. He adds elements that he feels and points us in the right direction, and we carry on going.
He picked on a few basic ideas and gave us some of his famous Ridley Graham sketches to discuss what the shape language was. And we developed from there.
That little wobble helps a lot, doesn't it? Right here. Where we have them a long way apart, like that. She's here. She comes into shot where there's plenty of time for, but it gives her a chance to do a bit of a reaction. The thing that I've always found most valuable to me was art school, and I could always visualize everything. I kind of still bored myself. I'll quietly noodle, and always something magical happens, and I start getting into the scene, seeing the scene from whose point of view and how I'm going to do it. Shoot! Is it like that?
No, it's like that.
I got a guy just going, whoa, like a wham.
That would work even
cut,
better.
bam,
Yeah.
pull him off his feet, then drag him.
Yeah.
If you do see it tonight.
It'd be good if the hat was off.
Could be.
Yeah, inside your little.
Unless you wanted to see the rain dripping off the brim of the hat, that might be good too.
Yeah. This is just what we're doing tonight. Talking. And the instructors are talking and briefing. Instructor, okay. I think it's, I can't remember, it's a Pyro or John's here, okay. So saying what it is, 12-minute intervals, 12-second intervals. It's a 12-minute course, da-di-da-di-da. There's a bit of dialogue here between you, right? Sorry, it doesn't look quite like you.
Now that I'm on steroids.
Right, okay.
There's the answer, okay.
Okay. I'm very primitive. I still storyboard everything myself. It's like a fast page reminder. Quite accurate, quite efficient. By doing that, it means you separate yourself into your own mind, where it's a bit like rewriting the visual essay on parallel with the spoken essay.
Ridley, he sits down and storyboards the entire film.
I think it helps me tremendously that I was an art director. I can really draw.
What's incredibly interesting about the way Ridley works is there's always a pad and there's always a pencil. And he'll start drawing and sketching as he speaks. So you see it's almost a simultaneous translation of the verbal ideas and the text with the imagery.
Like that. It's pretty good, huh? I literally boarded all the main sequences. As they say, the picture is 1,000 words. We see that the beginning of something on his back. The thing is strong enough to push through and separate the spine, bites its way out.
He draws it out. It's really fascinating to work with a director who is so visual.
He has this entire universe in his head.
You're constantly redrawing. It will evolve digitally when you get it literally on set. So by the time you get to Australia, you've got a book, which are like photographs of a target of what you're going to build.
Okay, so
Does he have to have the dagger?
see? Yeah. Smashes. version of this.
Kisses her on the cheek.
Marguerite, come. Give our old friend a kiss and show the good faith of the House Carouche.
Is this when he tries?
Yeah, this is it.
Then he talks. Grab the edge of her cloak, that's going to stop her. For me, every scene has to have a stake. Large or small. It looks difficult. It's not difficult. And we just showed how easy it is.
Yes. Yeah.